Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, co-founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, authors, musicians, you name it, in the world of crypto and blockchain all around the world. And today I have an amazing guest. Actually, it's the first time I had somebody from this organization or related organizations, believe it or not. His name is David Bchiri. He is the president of XRPL Commons. David, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
You're very, very welcome. So, yeah, you're my first XRP related guest.
I'm glad to
That's
be the XRP Ledger ecosystem.
awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So let's kick things off with the first question. Let me ask you this. What is your background? And is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
I hope it's logical, but I didn't have a very linear career. I'm an engineer, a computer science engineer. I've been in the space for 20 some years, and I'm mostly an entrepreneur. I've had a few companies that I started and run in the e-commerce space. I've built a number of brands online. And then in 2016, I started another company that was more geared toward consulting. And we were doing innovative venue, so running innovation for large corporations. We did it a number of times for a number of big companies. And we sold that company to a larger one. And then I moved over to San Francisco to be in the Silicon Valley for a couple of years. Where I ran the operations for this company. And during that time, I had a big mission to try to explain what blockchain was and how it could be leveraged to a French insurance group. That was in 2019. And that put me on a path to where I am today. So for the last 3-4 years, I've been working on a range of blockchain projects. I've done, I did a number of things that led me to believe that blockchain is much more than just a tool for NFTs or a tool for crypto. I believe it's a real infrastructure to create trust, layer of trust. And very early on, I was committed to using blockchain in the more industrial space. So I started to dig into that aspect. How can big institutions, public institutions leverage that? And how can we make them understand the potential there is to use blockchain? And in that aspect, at the time in the blockchain world, the blockchains that are related to more industrious use cases, I met the XRP Ledger. I've done stunts in other chains, but I've met the XRP Ledger and the XRP Ledger community. That's how I entered the space really, and decided to go to make it my main focus for the next 10 years. Who knows? So I'm not sure it's logical, but looking backwards, it makes a lot of sense to me.
It makes sense to me. We all get here differently, and the fact that we have something in common, which is that insurance background and that corporate experience. So that's pretty good. XRPL, right? I want to find out what XRPL Commons is all about, and then including your relationship to Ripple, or in the XRP ecosystem, and what makes your organization the go-to guidance resource for those curious about blockchain.
Well, sure. XRP Ledger, maybe I can start with that. XRP Ledger, what it is. For those of you who don't know XRP Ledger, I mean, probably most of your listeners know about XRP. XRP Ledger is the protocol, it's the blockchain. So it's a layer 1 open source public blockchain, and every word counts here. That basically enables transacting between peers for very, very, very cheap transaction fee, almost free, but not free, and very efficient. So if you look back at the history of blockchains, the XRP Ledger was released just a couple of years after the Bitcoin. It was the third blockchain in the history of blockchain. First blockchain to pack a DEX at the layer 1 level. It was, I would say, there before other chains. Why it's important? Because a lot of choices, technical choices or philosophical choices were made because it was one of the first movers. It was a very early protocol out there. In the space, most of the people know Ripple. Ripple was the original designer and creator of the XRP ledger. The engineers that started the protocol launched Ripple along with other people, but basically Ripple design and created the protocol and then open sourced the protocol. So now there's a whole community of developers, validators, and a lot of independent contributors who are building the protocol itself or on top of the protocol, and Ripple being one of the contributors. Ripple has a few nodes on the network and participates to the design and enhancement of new features on the protocol, but there are a number of others today. So, trying to debunk the usual ideas or preconceived ideas that people have about the XRP ledger. It's not centralized, very much decentralized. It's public. It has its own consensus approach, and lets anyone connect to the network to run transactions on the network. So that's for the history. Started in 2012. June 2012 was the Genesis block. Since then, about 83 million ledgers were validated and still moving forward. Every 3 seconds on average, there's a new ledger validated, a new block validated. And XRPL Commons come as a new non-profit organization that I'm leading. It's based in Paris, but we're targeting a very international audience. And we're basically trying to fill the blanks in the ecosystem. I've been watching the ecosystem for some time and realized that a lot of players in the XRPL ecosystem are doing a good job for the ecosystem. There's the XRPL Foundation that is helping anyone who wants to operate infrastructure on the protocol, that is leading the community of validators, community of developers, and this one is totally independent, based in Estonia, and is a force of progress in the ecosystem. There's Ripple, which is a big contributor to the ecosystem in terms of enhancement of the protocol and in terms of use case. Ripple has built a company that is now, an international, pretty successful company that is providing services on top of the XRP ledger, and a range of other programs. There's a research program. It's called UBRI, University Blockchain Research Initiative, that has been running since 2018, providing resources and grants to research labs throughout the world. I think close to 60 universities now are partners and benefit from these programs, thanks to which they have built blockchain research labs internally in their universities. And I figured there's a need for newcomers to get on board easily with sort of finding role models for them to get on board. How do you get on board? The first reaction is you read the documentation. Reading the documentation can be a bit lonely. So what we're trying to do is really, we have a basic mission statement. It's creating the conditions of success for developers and entrepreneurs in the XRPL ecosystem. What do you gonna ask me next question? What are they? These conditions of success? Very early on, I believed that the next billion user was not going to come from a public audience. I really believe that adoption will be driven massively by corporation and institution, and it will be done in the back office of their tool stack and technical stack. So how do we get them to adopt the XRP ledger? Well, there's a big question of, do they even know what blockchain is? There's a lot of use cases that they've heard about, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, but do they really know what is the infrastructure that allows it to run smoothly? Often the answer is no. So there's a real need for education at the corporate level, and we're trying to engage with C-level to raise awareness. In the tech space, we call that evangelism, but it's basically goes down to a conversation with key stakeholders in big companies to explain to them how they can leverage the potential of blockchain for their own business. Not like, as a one size fits them all, but really in your particular industry, there are a number of use cases where blockchain can unlock exponential value. That's one thing we're doing. Second thing is democratizing knowledge. If your reference is online documentation, it's going to be very hard to bring people to just read it. Especially now, there are like 50 blockchains out there. Every week we hear of a new protocol that comes out. So how do you bring people to get interested first? Not even become experts, but first get interested in your technology. What we're trying to do is bring the technology to universities and students, computer science students, but also regulatory students, non-technical students. And we found out as soon as we launched in April this year that there's a huge need for teachers because there's a lot of pressure from the students themselves. They want to be taught blockchain. They want to learn about it. They know more about it than the average teacher. And so they are getting together in student associations and blockchain clubs, and they're doing a great job. But the universities themselves also want to provide a more classical curriculum about blockchain. So we're helping a number of universities today to train their teachers, or we're finding people in our ecosystem who are willing to teach blockchain. We're experts and we're willing to teach blockchain to the students. So that's a big part of what we do. That's already two things. So knowledge, corporate adoption, and then startups and entrepreneurship. We just launched in September something that is called the Aquarium. The Aquarium is a residence very much inspired by an art residence where we invite people we select on application, and we bring them here in Paris. They work with us at our HQ, and we basically put them under pressure for 3 months where they get a lot of knowledge, training, mentorship. They get to learn about a range of things they didn't know about: game theory, UX, how to move fast, how to be agile, how to create a team that's very committed. And we're trying to get them from the idea to a minimum viable product. And at that stage, our hopes is that they're mature enough so that they can ask for a grant. There's a program named the XRPL Grants Program that is run in the US by a team at Ripple that provides basically money and resources for people who are willing to build good ideas on the XRP ledger. And so we're, as I'm trying to explain, we're trying to create and design programs that fit exactly into the blank space of what the other entities in the ecosystem are already doing. We're trying to just add value to the rest and accelerate the adoption overall.
Awesome. Wow. There's a lot to unpack there. And the first one is, and you explained Ripple's role and you explained your role and other companies' roles, and explained that XRP is this decentralized ledger. And if you only followed the SEC's lawsuit against Ripple Labs, you think XRP is only an illegal security that was fully issued by Ripple, and it wasn't this decentralized global ledger. So the narrative here is completely skewed and false. And you want to bring in adoption and interest. So how do you overcome that?
I think education is the most powerful tool. Getting the right content in front of the right eyes. Even for me, before I entered the space and the XRP Ledger ecosystem, it was very hard for me to read it from an external perspective. Like, how do you make sense of everything that happened in the XRP Ledger ecosystem. How is Ripple different from, people are saying I'm buying some Ripple, or you're running the Ripple blockchain. So to clarify, you just need to take a second and know the story. It was designed by Ripple 11, 12 years ago, and then it became an open source protocol. Ripple is now building a SaaS product on top of the protocol, and the protocol is open source. Anyone can build on it. And actually, a lot of people have adopted it and are building on it. So it's very frustrating for some people who are building on the XRP Ledger to hear, oh, you're building on it on Ripple. Like, no, Ripple is a different company. My company is doing something else. I'm not into payments. I'm doing something different, and I'm building on the protocol that we share with others, Ripple being one of them. And if, we started this project almost, I would say, a year and a half ago. It launched really in April, but I started working on it earlier. And I found out that when I started, there was, of course, some risk. The SEC trial was not done already, and a lot of people in the space were skeptical about working with XRP Ledger. They were like, why XRP Ledger? It's risky. There's a lot of pressure right now on the whole ecosystem. Everyone is looking at the outcome of this lawsuit, and I was like, listen, I'm not into politics. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about that. What I know is that I've seen the technology, how it works, and it works great. And it's been working great for more than 10 years. It may be like among the old blockchains, but it's sturdy. It never failed, never got a major hack. And the community that's behind it is very committed. It's rare to see an open source project with so many people who are there and have been there for a decade now. So not, and I don't really come into the space with a cryptocurrency perspective. I really came for the underlying technology and the infrastructure behind, and I found that people working on XRP Ledger have found solutions to every issues, and they were very visionaries. When they started 10 years, 11 years ago, there was no such thing as a DEX, and they sort of, they found out that, oh, we need something for people to exchange value on the ledger. Let's build it. Later, at the core of XRP Ledger, there's something called IOU. It's a digital representation of a value that someone owes to someone else. And if this value is $1, then it's called a stable coin. And a stable coin was not even a word we used 10 years ago. So what I found great about this technology was the people who started it had a vision, and they were trying to really solve a pain point for an industry, which they did. I mean, it's not solved yet, but the technology is out there to solve it. And in the history of blockchains, what I've seen often is there's a huge novelty in technology, but it's actually not related to a pain point. It's just scientific advancement for the community, but does it really solve something for the real world? And the XRP Ledger, I think, is really committed to finding solutions to real world issues.
I would say I agree with the consistency. I agree with the solutions for real world problems, and it makes sense to me. So I was going to ask you about the residency program, but you explained that to me. So I have a question. There's been a recent study by Versatis Labs. I don't know much about them, but it said there was a shortage of Web3 developers, right? So since XRP is consistent, people are building on it. You should be able to attract more developers, but there is a shortage according to the study. What do you think are the main challenges and obstacles that have led to the shortage of Web3 developers?
That's a great question. I would say supply and demand in any market is something everyone is trying to solve. I would say 2-3 years ago, people were interested in building on the prominent technology. So at the time, that was Ethereum. There was no doubt. or learning Solidity. I taught myself Solidity. I found that I haven't been a developer in too long to become a Solidity developer, but it was interesting enough for me to understand how it's built, what's under the hood. If you look at the learning curve to become a proficient Web3 developer, it's pretty steep. It's not something you can improvise and after a month of training, okay, you can call yourself a Web3 developer. It's a long learning curve. So you need to find people who are committed to their learning curve, to become good enough so that they can find work in the end. If you learn a new technology as a professional developer, you want to be able to use it on your day-to-day job. And what we found out was there was there was a lot of demand for basic stuff, building simple smart contracts, and a lot of money was pumping into the ecosystem. A lot of VCs were investing. Some are still are, but the 2020, 2021, there was a boom, and so everyone was sort of envisioning learning technologies for becoming developer in the Web3 space. And suddenly there was less money in the ecosystem because people who were investing in projects were broke because the price of cryptocurrencies went down. Some VCs became, there was also a major global financial crisis around the globe. So VCs were suddenly taking less risk, or they were investing more money in bigger projects, and the small projects got less investment. And so there was less demand for trained Web3 developers. So suddenly it was less attractive for developers to train themselves on these technologies. I guess a lot of developers, if I was a developer graduating 2 years ago, I would probably be hesitating between Web3 and AI. And it seems like AI right now is getting more traction from an investment perspective. And so it generates more opportunities for developers to work in this industry. So it's interesting to zoom out and see the big picture. It's not just Web3. I think it's like a global trend. Where is the money going in terms of investment? And so where are these new opportunities for developers? Here at Commons, we provide a free training, a 2-day training for developers who are already developers. We're not teaching you how to become a developer. But if you're a developer and you want to learn about blockchain, well, in 2 days, we can explain how to work with XRP Ledger, what are the basic concepts of XRP Ledger, and how to write your own transactions. The interesting part of XRP Ledger, while also I'm a big believer in that, and that answers part of your questions, what are the levers to bring more people in the space? XRP Ledger was started 12 years ago. It has a number of libraries that lets you code on XRP Ledger with any modern programming language. So if you know C++, not that modern. Okay, I hear the audience saying not that modern, but C++, Rust, Go, C#, JavaScript, TypeScript. There are so many libraries that you can start with the language you already know. If you're a Python developer, you don't want to learn anything about C++ or Michelson or Caro. You don't want to teach yourself a new programming language because you're already proficient in Python. Then XRP Ledger lets you start coding on day one with Python. So that's a huge argument to start working with XRP Ledger, is that you don't have to learn new skills. Basically, you have to learn how the technology works. You have to learn how the library worked, and then you can start building. So I guess to summarize, I know I can talk. To summarize, I would say to make it easier for people to join the space, technicians. I'm talking about technicians. There should be little to no barrier to entry. So if you have to learn and reskill your whole team on a new set of language tools, and it's hard. It takes time. You have to really believe that you're going to make money out of this technology. So instead of that, what I'm saying to potential partners when they are looking into our training is that come for 2 days. 2 days it's not a big commitment. 2 hours it's not enough of a commitment, but 2 days it's enough of a commitment for me to say we're going to teach you the basic concept of XRP Ledger, and after that they can decide whether or not it's the technology they want to use in their next projects. So you have to build trust with people before they can commit to learning something. We've totally passed the hype of, yeah, it's just cool, let's learn about it because it's just cool. I think professional developers want to know whether or not there's opportunity for them to use their skills and make a living with it. I think learning blockchain, and I'm speaking broadly, any blockchain today is still very valuable in the market. And XRPL Commons has, as I was saying, my North Star is to create opportunities for developers and entrepreneurs. So trying to pave the way for them is making it easy to enter, making it also very easy to ask questions. So for the XRPL the developer community, there's a Discord that's very, very active. Thousands of people are on the Discord. And what I really like about it is that you found the most prolific developers, the one that are building for the biggest brands in the XRPL ecosystem. They are there, and they're answering questions on a daily basis. So if you come with a valuable technical question on this server, you will find an answer in less than an hour. If you come with questions about when the XRP will moon, you might you might get another sort of answer. But basically, this community of developers is very committed and very shows a lot of help to each other.
I love that moon comment. That's good. So my background before I got into crypto, I worked in a SQL dev shop, at AIG for 5 years. Is SQL part of that, library?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, so I might have to come there for a couple of days and get trained. So that'd be great.
So to your point, because we're Paris based, but we're trying to address a global community. We know our developers are not all in Paris, and good for us, So everything we do here in our office, so we have a classroom. Everything that happens in that classroom is filmed, recorded, and then put online on our YouTube channel, so anyone can follow that later in replay at their own pace. Sorry. And we're also making available all the content, the boilerplate, the core code infrastructure that we develop for the training. We make it also available open source.
Very cool. So interesting. I want to go back to that study. The data study said in the same study, it says 91%. I'm looking at the numbers. 91% of developers surveyed work at established Web2 companies. So that means to me that 9%, only 9% or less, are entrepreneurs or startups, right? To me, that should be a concern. That's concerning. Like, to me, that's because this industry of crypto is based on entrepreneurs and startups, and you only have 9% of them or less. How can your company partner with like educational institutions or entrepreneur startups to address, this number that could be concerned in the long term?
So it's not really concerning to me because we're in the very early days of blockchain adoption. We say that the average adoption cycle for new technology is 30 years. So between the time I got my first mobile phone and the time my mom can buy something online with her mobile phone, there's 30 years. So right now, I would say we're in the first third of this adoption cycle. And so, if we're doing a good job in the next 10 years, there will be demand. There will be pressure on the market to train new Web3 developers. But it's not concerning that today, if you take a snapshot and look at the state of our developer community, only 9% are in Web3 companies. It's not surprising to me. Who are the big well, the big suppliers of developer jobs. They're the big companies that make money today. These companies are the big techs, the traditional tech companies, and also the traditional non-tech companies, but still require people to run their back office tools and their IT and everything. So there are probably more developers in the bank world today, in the banking space today, than there is in the whole Web3 space. But the number of developers that are coming to the Web3 space are very committed, and I would say it comes with a premium. When money will flow back into the Web3 ecosystem, and I think it's starting to go again, but in the different kind of projects. And we can talk about it later, but the money that comes there is going to generate opportunities for developers to work from what they really, really enjoy. But it's not just about what technology you're using, or is your boss cool, or do you get good swag in your company? I don't think it's about that at all. I really believe that people coming into the space come with the intuition that they can have an impact on the world. I think this is my main motivation, recreating a layer of trust in this huge crisis of trust we're going through right now. I think people getting into the space have the impression they can make an impact. And so, they can decide it's in the financial world, in the intellectual property world, in the creator world, in whatever, you feel closer to. But in the end, I think people believe they can have more impact working for a Web3 company than working for a big tech company. And I'm not putting any sort of judgment here. I just believe that when you're employee number 2073 in a huge company that has offices everywhere in the world, and your scope is really, okay, you're going to work in that square and try to just implement this function, and you don't really feel that you're participating to a bigger effort. Some companies that are big still manage to do that, to provide an incentive to people to really participate to the global effort. But the promise of working in a small company that has a huge ambition in the Web3 space is really, really motivating.
I agree. So my next question was going to be around regulatory, but I'm going to hold off on that. You mentioned this twice already. You said that we got tanked as an industry back in for the past 2 years, right? You had developers who left, right? And we need to recreate this environment of trust. How do you think we can recreate this environment of trust so that we can build a robust future for the developers and the community going forward?
I think addressing hard use cases, the one that are creating value outside of the speculative value, is what's going to be change, like, to improve drastically this space. So having used blockchain for a particular use case in a particular industry, and really improving this process by a 10x factor or a 100x factor, is really something that will make an impact, that will change for good, that will make other industries want to move to the space and say, oh, you tokenized your debt management using blockchain and AI, or there can also be a convergence of technologies there. But using blockchain and making a shift for the final user, I'm not talking about developer here, the final user, changing the way they work by saying, we have used a new tool that will totally transform the way you work, that will trigger a chain reaction. Other industries will want to do the same thing. I think we haven't done a good job as an ecosystem, at the global Web3 ecosystem, to prove the value of using blockchain. And the media have really made a feast on the beast, about saying that the whole blockchain ecosystem was boiled really down to just crypto, and not even the good part of crypto. Crypto can be an amazing tool. Programmatic money is fascinating. The number of things you can do with digital money, you can basically transform the way a country works. or the global economy works. But the way the medias have talked about the crypto in the last 2 years was really crypto is bad because it's speculation. It doesn't create value only for a few happy few who know what they're doing, and the rest of the world is losing money. And they were really focusing on that, and they shaped a narrative where it was hard for the people in the space to defend what they were doing. So I really want to work on that narrative again, and show the world there's real value in using blockchain, and not just any sort of database. If you use blockchain in a particular use case, you transform the way this industry works. Let's take the example of retail. On the value chain of retail, there's factory processing, the whole traceability of goods, where the raw material come from, that is something you can do internally on a database. But if you decentralize that, suddenly you make it bulletproof to any attack or any sort of you make your supply chain very trustworthy. And then going down the chain, if you look at the second-hand market, if you're selling luxury goods, there's a real value in knowing where the product is going after it's sold, and keeping this level of trust for the final user, knowing that it's a real bag or it's a real leather good that comes from this factory that was made by hand, because this is the claim that the brand is making. I think there's a real value in implementing that kind of solutions. And if you do it on a blockchain, then it's bulletproof.
So I agree with you with the media. I think that over the past 2 years, what I've seen, people disagree with me here, but I've seen regulatory capture, you know. But you said there are differences now, and they're going to be differences as we move out of the bear cycle and into the bull cycle over the next year and a half, right? What do you see as the beginning of those differences, despite the regulatory capture?
I'd say the level of the conversations we're having right now, the people we're talking to, even public institutions, they're suddenly they have found the value. I think most of the corporations now, they have someone who's in charge of Web3 or blockchain, or they have someone who's internally trying to educate people, and it's taking time. And when we speak to a lot of these people, and they're like, this is hard, we're trying to do it, but it's really hard. People are reluctant to change. That's the human nature. We don't want to change. We don't like to change. It's hard to change. But if you prove that there's instant value to be unlocked by using a new technology, I'll make a parallel with AI. It's very easy for people doing consulting in AI to prove their point, because in less than 3 months, companies will reduce their budget or have financial impact. The return on investment is instant. On blockchain, it's more difficult to prove it. But if you've run through a scandal, for instance, you had to do communication crisis because you were selling something and it was not what you thought you were selling. I don't want to give names, but it happens that in your supply chain there's a mistake, and you did everything in good faith, but still the final user was abused or lied to in a way. If you can replace in one part of your production chain one piece that will just remove that part where you know exactly that what's in the database cannot be changed, moved, or by anyone, even if you trust anyone in your company, it's not just physically or technically not possible to change the value that is stored. Well, you can sleep better because you're protected from a potential scandal later. And I'm being very vague here. I know that, but I'm a big believer that these big companies, big institutions, they start to realize the potential. So we're trying to enable, the transformative part. Like, if you're convinced now, or if your guts are telling you it's a good time to do it, we're trying to enable them to do it. And also regulation helps. We said we'll talk about it later, but there's, good sign right now when we talk to a board of executives. If the CEO is convinced, then comes the chief financial officer who's going to ask us question about, but how do we modelize a new business model based on something that's super volatile? You bring so there's no staking on XRP Ledger, but if you're using a blockchain because you want to stake money and try to get interest out of that, how do you prevent it from being considered some kind of revenue, and how do you overcome tax issues? These are really valid questions for a financial executive. And so now we're coming to, I would say, a more mature framework in terms of regulation so that we can find the answers. We have a number of experts on the market. We can answer also these questions. And then comes the chief legal officer, who always asks, like, is it valid for us? We're operating in a number of countries. The regulation is not the same in every country. How can we make sure that what we do, even if it's okay and legal to do it where we do it, if we scale the business in other geographies, will it be still okay to do it? And launching a Web3 project in the Web3 space, I would say it's very small. It doesn't have a lot of implications. But when you run a multi-billion-dollar company with 12 branches in 12 different countries, how do you make sure that your implementation of something in one country will be valid for the others? Or how do you overcome what might not be okay in other countries? And so, for a while, these stakeholders were clear. They just didn't want to get involved with crypto. It was easier to say we don't do crypto because then the bank doesn't ask any question. Then we're sure we're not gonna be brought into questions we don't even know how to answer. So for a while it was done like that. Now, with the utility that they perceive in blockchain, they understand that they can run things on a blockchain without having to deal with the crypto part. They can use blockchain as a trust infrastructure without dealing with the volatility of the crypto or the tokens. They can, they have more and more answers to these questions. So I'm confident that we're moving in the right direction. It's slow, way slower than what we would like, but I told you, adoption cycle, I believe it's 30 years. And so if in the next 5 to 10 years we get to change that and convince major institutions, major corporations that they can use blockchain on particular use cases in their whole value chain, we're going to make huge progress.
I'll be honest, I never considered the cycle being 30 years, but you know what? It is 30 years, Wow. I'm like, okay, so we didn't moon yesterday, or we're not moving today. Well, we're moon in 30 years, or less.
Adoption cycle of technology is very different from the financial cycle of what the token is worth. It's two different information. It's not related, not correlated. Some wish it would be correlated, but it's not. One doesn't mean the other is happening.
Got it. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time today. This has been a wonderful conversation. I enjoyed it immensely. And so I have one final question, and it's this. How can people find out more information about you, about XRPL Commons? How can they learn more about the XRP Ledger? How can they do that? How can they, join your residency program? How can they do any of that?
Well, likewise, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for having me today. We're on social media. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Twitter, XRPL Commons. We have a website, xrpl-commons, commons.org, where all the programs are well explained. Application for the second cohort in the aquarium. This is how we call our residency. The aquarium number 2 will start in January. Applications are now open. And the first session was focused on regeneration, building a regenerative product or implement regeneration into a Web3 product. And the next session will be about intellectual property, how to design business models that are leveraging the blockchain in intellectual property. So we're getting a lot of applications at the moment, but it's still open. We have I think we have confirmed half of the next cohort, so still maybe 6 or 7 spots open. And about that, we're just to get your audience into it. We're basically covering all the expenses for the people who are traveling to us. So anywhere you are, we pay for the travel fees. We host people here. We have a co-living space where the residents stay together, and we give a stipend to everyone to live in Paris because the life in Paris is expensive. So once people present, they just have to send their application, but it's a consistent application. We want to have people who are motivated, committed to staying 3 months with us, committed to learn, and committed to do things, build things. We really want builders to be part of it. And so we're trying to answer every email we get. We're 12 people now in the team, and still growing, but 12 people it's a big team, but it's also a very small team compared to the amount of work we have to do. So if you send anything and we're not responsive, please be patient. We're trying to answer everyone's email.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Great to be with you, and looking forward to next conversation, Jamil.